folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. So today I want to get back into our Survive series, and I want to talk about a subject that I have considered doing for a while, but I've kind of held back just a little bit because it starts to invade into the political correctness realm. And while I'm certainly not a politically correct kind of person, just kind of wanting to be careful because I don't want to come across as offending my own audience. And that's what's most important to me. But I think that my own audience here understands where I'm getting at, because I've had a lot of requests lately, and especially just the last few days, from various people asking for this. So I want to talk about how to survive if you're a woman, if you're a single woman, if you're a single mother. I think a lot of those kind of all blend together, and I want to talk about that. Now, some of the things I'm going to say is not politically correct, but they're just kind of the reality of it. And it does, present us the whole scenario of a woman on her own trying to survive, and the things that are happening and the things that very well could happen. Some of this stuff is just truth. And whether it sounds good, whether it sets well with a person, it's just the way it is. And so I want to get into that. First off, I understand, and I'm of the belief that a woman can do pretty much anything a man can do if she sets her mind to it. But I also realize that there are limitations. There are things that a woman can do that a man just cannot do. And there's some things that a woman can just do a whole lot better. A man may be able to do it, but a woman can just do it better. And it's just how they were created. I believe that's how the Father just created us. It just makes sense. It's the same way if you go out into the natural animal world. The male species of an animal does things that the female species doesn't do. And he does things better and she does other things better. And that's just how things work. It's part of that balance. So I don't want to ever come across as that, you women just can't cut it. You just can't do what us guys can do, and because that's not true. There may be a few things that you just can't do, but the big point is that there's a few things that you just may not be able to do as well as a guy, and that's typically when it comes to just brute strength. And so we'll cover some of that in this video. Other than that, a lot of the basics are going to be the same. Most women typically are much better organizers. They're usually really good at focusing on detail. And I think that's just how the Father created them. They're good at multitasking. They're good at running a home, taking care of kids, and also figuring out, a lot of other things at the same time. Whereas guys, they kind of have to be hyper focused on something. And I think, again, that's how men are created for a purpose. Traditionally in the past, and when mankind was first put on this planet, the men, they had to go off to war. The men had to defend their homes. The men had to go hunting, and you can't be multitasking while you're doing that. You have to be able to hyper focus on something, hyper focus on your target, hyper focus, on your enemy, on the game that you're killing. And so that's why we see men today a lot of times the way that they are. And there's nothing wrong with either of those. That's the whole big problem today, without turning this video into some political thing, is that everyone thinks that that's a big issue. Well, that men are hyper focused because of this, and women multitask, and this. That's just how we are. Accept it and deal with it. And I think that that's okay. Now, let's get on to actual survival stuff. I told you this one's a little different. I just feel like I have to kind of, make some clarifications before I jump into it. When I first started, I just want to say this. When I first started this channel, I just assumed, and I found out that I was wrong, but I assumed that my channel would be mostly received by men. And that the things that I would talk about would, kind of be more focused on men, and because, and this is my fault. I mean, I'm going to admit something to you. I was wrong, and that it would mostly be men that would be drawn to survival and to preparedness and to living off the land and to self-sufficient lifestyle. And what I found is that my viewership is about 50-50 when it comes to male female. And but what is interesting is it's usually the women that are more engaged in the conversations. I tend to get more women making comments, asking questions. Seems to be more engaged in that. And I don't think it's because men just know all the answers and they don't have to be engaged. I think it's because sometimes women tend to be, since they're the nurturers, they see what's going on and they realize that, things are getting bad and they need to get ready. I probably get more emails from women asking how do I wake up my husband than I get the opposite, where I would get a man saying, how do I wake up my wife? It's usually the women that are already awake to what's going on and they're trying to get their husbands awake. And that's a shame that it's that way. First off, just the normal prep stuff is going to be the same. The food, prepping supplies, that's all going to be the same. I really can't see any difference between how a single mother or single woman would do it, other than it's possible, and this kind of is the national kind of average, that a single mother may have less income than a single male, and probably certainly than a family. And so you may have less finances to get into prepping and to prep to the level that you want. But here's the thing, it's not really as expensive as you think. You have to put a little work into it. And I understand time is money, but not really. I mean, not in this scenario, at least I don't think. You can find really good deals. The vast majority of the food that we have stocked up in our big prep pantry, we haven't paid a terrible amount of money for it. We've shopped around, we've looked for really good deals at insurance discount grocery stores. That's one of our big places to find, and that kind of stuff. They're usually all over those type of stores, and a lot of times you can get things. It's a lot of people call it salvage grocery or something. A lot of this stuff is maybe past its sell by date, or very near that. Maybe the packaging has been damaged, but obviously nothing's wrong with it. It's just not perfect enough to set on a regular store shelf. And you can go in and you can buy things quite cheap sometimes. I've seen cases, we bought cases of like crackers for a quarter to $1 for the entire case. So that's a really good way. So I would research in your area to look for some type of discount grocery, salvage type grocery, insurance salvage grocery stores. And you can stock up a lot better on that way. Other things, like your big bulk items like beans and rice, they're not terribly expensive. You can even with the increase of prices, and they have gone up, but they're still cheap enough that, if I took $100 to say Walmart and I wanted to just buy some pinto beans, dry beans, I can buy a lot of beans for $100. Usually you can buy them in either 10 or 20 pound bags. Sometimes they're a little smaller. I've seen just different Walmarts. Sometimes certain Walmarts have really big bags, other ones don't. And I'm not a fan of Walmart at all. But on those items, particular, the beans and the rice, the bulk dry, it's really hard to beat their price unless you just find the right bulk supplier. So that's a good place to get that kind of stuff. As far as the buckets to put in it and everything, it's going to be, either Walmart or Amazon or something like that. But the point is that bulking up on your food can be done pretty cheap if you shop around and you keep it simple. None of the stuff that we have. We also shop a lot at Aldi's. If you have one of those in your area, you may have something that's similar to that, and it's a good way to get food quickly. Medical stuff, you just have to shop around on that. As far as just like your simple band-aids and bandages and stuff, we typically go to like a dollar type store, and if we catch it just right, we can stock up quite well on things like that. So all that stuff's going to be pretty much the same. And, you know, once we get past that, we're getting into kind of the more nitty gritty. How do you do it all if you're a single mother? You know, you've got 1, 2, 3 kids and you're by yourself. That's tough. Um, if your children are old enough to do things, and not old enough based on modern standards, but old enough based on how things used to be, which means that, you know, a 5-year-old child can do things. A 5-year-old child can be a contributor to the family and not just a drain on resources. And I know that's put in harshly, but we're just dealing with facts here, okay? No emotions, not emotions in this video. um, Back in the old days, a 5-year-old kid, you know, could get water and bring it up, could carry things, could feed animals, could gather eggs. You know, they could help a lot. And nowadays it's like, oh well, you know, you can't do anything. And I've even heard of, you know, 10-year-olds not really doing anything for chores. I guess that's the new thing nowadays, is that kids don't have chores and they don't work around the home. That's not how it was when I grew up. I mean, basically, as soon as you could start getting up and walking around and thinking somewhat clearly, you had jobs to do and you had a responsibility. You had to earn your keep. And you have to think of it that way. Get your kids busy. Teach them how to do this kind of stuff. And most of the time, they're going to love it. Most of the time, there may be a little bit of a transition period, but they're going to grow to love the lifestyle and to love you know, kind of doing things more simply. And so even if you live in the city or an apartment or something, I would start doing that as much as you can now, just for nothing else, as training for your children. You know, if you live in an apartment, you're like, I don't have to carry water in buckets. We'll do it anyways. Do it anyways. You know, do it for training. If nothing else, so that your children understand that this is kind of the things that we might have to do. They can be a big help. Okay, so don't just say, well, I've got kids and they're a big drain. Now if they're babies, of course that's a little different. But you know, you can still do this stuff. Back in the, you know, think of the Native Americans. You know, these women, I remember reading in a book that the babies were pretty much on their body at all time. You know, they would do the carry, which, you know, when I had a baby, not I didn't have it, but had a baby, that was something that we did. We did the carry and the sling and everything. And there's different options for that, and learn to use that. And if you do that, you can do quite a bit. And back in the old days, that's how people did it. And they did all their chores and they did all their work carrying the baby on them. Now, what about the other stuff, okay? There's safety and security and just brute strength of things that you're going to say, well, I just can't do that. I mean, I'm willing to try, I'm willing to learn, but I know that my physical strength is going to hold me back from doing that. Or I'm not able to protect myself and my family and do all that. Well, it does create new problems. Number one, you really need to make it a high priority to try to connect with other like-minded people. I see that all the time, and I still have people say, I try and I just can't. And I understand that there's a possibility that you can't, but I'm still of the belief that even with those people, if they tried other ways and stuff, there's a chance that they could connect. Look at types, try to research groups that would meet in your area that could possibly be like-minded. Homeschool groups. If you're homeschooling and there's homeschool groups in your area, there's a strong possibility that some of the people in that homeschool group are going to be like-minded. Gun clubs, different types of homesteading type of, you know, if you buy raw milk, and there's people in your area that you would buy raw milk, or farmers markets, go and see, you know, not everyone there is going to be like-minded, but you might be able to find someone that are living more self-sufficient. Making connections with people like that is really important. We have a website here that we've been running. It's our own little social media website, and it's grown quite well. So if you're not familiar with it, please join. It's completely free, and we don't spam you with advertisements and try to get money out of you or sell your information. It's at tphnetwork.com. We don't make any money off of it. We're just trying to do something to help out other people to connect and learn. And it's working. There's like 3,200 people on the site right now, and everyone really loves it. So this is just a plug for that. Go to tphnetwork.com and you might be able to find people in your area. A lot of people are doing that. So that's very critical, is trying to find people in your area. Um, you know, as a single, as the world continues to fall out of control, and we don't know how big the collapse is, and we don't know which direction things are going to go. Is the collapse going to happen and the great reset really kicks in and just takes us on to this weird technological utopia, or maybe that just doesn't work out like they hoped and it just collapses and we kind of revert back in history a little bit. If that happens, a woman's safety and security could be even more jeopardy than there already is. I mean, we're already seeing signs of that. As things continue to collapse and spiral out of control, we're seeing crime increase everywhere. We all know about that. I just saw, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that in Atlanta, Georgia, in the last year, that rapes have gone up 230 some percent. And we're seeing, assaults, violent crimes and assaults everywhere go up. And that's a big sign of society kind of spiraling out of control. There is a real big reason why back in the old days, and I'm talking all the way back into the Bible times, up through the Dark Ages and even the Middle Ages, that women usually had to have an escort if they went somewhere. And they typically had to have, and this is generally true in most cultures, they had to have some type of covering over them. I'm not talking about a physical covering over their head. I'm talking about a covering over them, and not just spiritual either. The woman either was married, or they were under their father's care and home, or maybe an older brother, or someone that was close to the family, if she didn't have, her husband died or something like that. And the reason being is because, well, people are just horrible people when society starts to break down. And in fact, that's just a little history lesson. That's where wedding rings really kind of came about, is a woman would have to wear some type of ring to denote that she was under someone's covering. She was married, she was under her father's home or something like that. People would typically leave her alone, and if they did, then they would have to pay some type of restitution to whoever, had the covering over her. I'm not saying that's the best way things can be, but I could see us getting closer to that time period again, as things kind of fall out of control. So a woman could very possibly need kind of that covering, need, maybe not just saying marriage, but another family. I mean, my wife and I have talked about that. And in fact, we know someone very close, physically close, in the direct area, and another family. And we've already kind of made that agreement. Like, if I was to die, they're going to kind of take on my family to protect them. And if their husband dies, then our job is to kind of take their family in and protect them. We're not talking about sharing beds with that. I'm not getting into that. Don't go off in that direction on me. I'm just saying that, they just live pretty close, and that would be the deal. It's already been discussed. This could very well happen again, where it's a necessity. So finding the right community, the right group of people, the right families to start having those discussions are important. Have skills that you can contribute to. Just because you might say, oh, well, my skills are, like homemaking type skills and sewing and cooking and stuff. That's fine, because that's excellent skills to have. You'd be surprised how few people nowadays know how to do that and do it well. But it doesn't mean that you can't learn other stuff. You can learn how to chop wood and butcher animals and shoot a gun. And a lot of you already know how to do that, and that's great. For the ones that don't, I would definitely work on learning that, expand that, and try to find people that can teach you the right way. Don't be discouraged just because, oh, I'm a woman and I've got kids and I can't do this. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. And if you work hard enough and you put enough effort into it, I think that there's a pretty good chance you're going to find other people somewhat close to you. You know, maybe it just starts out people online. And then that can grow into people physically near you that can help you, help teach you, and work with you, and where you're not just a liability, but you're a contributing member to that community. You know, just don't buy into this nonsense that, you know, only the men are going to survive. Are the men going to be stronger? Men are built to be stronger. You may be a really strong woman, but there's always going to be a man that's stronger than you. It's just the unfortunate truth. But you can still survive, and trying to think ahead and focus on the things that you can't do, and trying to fix that, trying to have some kind of knowledge in that, work on your security, your safety. Are there people that you can kind of depend on to help with that? And then also the things that you already know how to do well, become an expert in those so that you can kind of contribute. You know, if you're the seamstress for your group, or if you're good at canning, or even homeschooling. Homeschooling is a skill, and a lot of people just don't know how to do it. And, you know, you can be the person, kind of the school teacher for the group. Whatever it is, you can certainly do that. And don't get discouraged just because you're a woman. Now, I had a couple of tips, and this one came in from one of the lady viewers here on the channel, so I wanted to pass this on. She actually grew up, and I'm not going to give the details, but she grew up in a country that collapsed, that fell apart, and they went through civil war and everything. And she said as soon as it happened, her mother shaved their heads, made them look like boys, made them, you know, dress very much like a boy, took away any kind of, you know, that they looked like a girl so that they wouldn't draw attention. Because as things collapse and people become less and less civilized, there's definitely going to be men that could prey on women. I mean, that's just the facts. And so she said they try to look as plain as can be and as boyish, mannish as they could, you know, shaved heads, clothes, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a good idea. She said they survived it. They went through a lot of hard times, but they survived it. And so I think that's a really good idea for women to consider, and to have preparations set up for that, to just blend in, being a gray man and blending in, and trying to look as tough or just as neutral as possible. I mean, it's just how it is. You know, a couple of guys are going to have, they're going to much less likely try to do something to me as they would a woman. That's just the facts. And so do a real good job with your blending in, your gray man tactics. And then, of course, just be ready to defend yourself. If you don't have a firearm, you should have one and know how to use it, and know how to use it well. What kind to get? Well, you get the kind that's comfortable and that you can shoot easily. You know, if you just can't shoot some big 45 caliber or 10 millimeter handgun, then don't get it. Just don't get it. You know, if a 380 is what you can comfortably shoot and confidently, then do it, and do it well. You know, don't buy into all the big hype about you got to have this or this. Just get something that you're confident and comfortable with, and do it well. But don't get discouraged at all. I have been overly impressed in my time here on YouTube of the amount of ladies that have knowledge and are just all over it. I mean, they put me to shame and other guys to shame. I've been very impressed. So for you that are just kind of waking up, or that you ladies that maybe feel a little discouraged because, you know, well, I can't do it as good as the guys, don't buy into that at all. That is absolutely not true for a moment. Our local meetings that we have, the ladies are a prominent part of it, and often are the ones up front speaking and teaching. So keep at it. Realize your weaknesses. You know, don't ignore them. Realize your weaknesses. Figure out a way to overcome what weaknesses you can, and the ones that you know you just can't overcome. Try to have plans in place by other people where you can work with. Maybe it's a neighbor, family, and you're like, hey, you know, if things got bad, could, you know, there be some kind of mutual agreement between us. Do those kind of things. And I think that most of the women out there, including single moms, can make this. Women are absolutely tough. In a lot of ways, I think a woman can be even much more tougher than a man. So, certainly don't be discouraged by that. Sorry for the video going a long time. I just felt it was a big subject and a lot to cover, and I hope some of you got some things out of this. Please leave your suggestions in the comments below of ideas that you have for single moms and how to survive. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.